Hey Kyle.
Hello. How's it going, Chris?
Good man. How are you doing? I
I'm
love that
doing good.
mustache.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, I will say that earlier in the week we were on a Zoom call and I made an accusation about your overall facial hair, which I'm not going to get into here. It looks better than that day.
That's great. Great news.
It's looking
Um,
good.
well, now, I'm seeing we have like 17 people watching this right now. I would love to hear from them too. What do you guys think? Is this
Yeah. Is it a
keep
good
it,
look?
invest in it more? Yeah, you guys let me know what you think. I'd
Well,
appreciate that.
mine is to keep going. I mean, grow that thing out as big as you can make it. That's really what I would suggest.
Okay.
Yeah. But, to each their own.
Yeah, Whitney agrees. She's calling it the Corona stash.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I
Joe says I can't babysit his kids. So, okay.
That's more to the comment I made earlier in the week. But
Um, yeah, I would love to know too from everybody watching. If anybody else is taking any risks here with, you know, the quarantining and social distancing. I haven't been able to get a haircut either in the last, 2 months. I needed one right before we went on, um, like shelter in place. So
yeah,
yeah, it's been challenging here. So let
literally
us know.
that Tuesday. So we went, or it was maybe it was a Wednesday. Anyway, the day after we went to shelter in place is when I had my hair appointment, and yeah, that didn't work out. So I gave myself
Hmm.
a haircut, which is why I'm now always wearing the hat. It's not. I do love the Red Sox, but it's not just because I'm a huge Red Sox fan. It's because it's a little
Yeah,
embarrassing. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, Hey guys, thank everyone for joining here. I see Jenna and Jennifer, Gunner, Denise, Whitney, Kelsey, Joe, Josh Boyer, Kylie. Man, it's great to see everybody. Some of you I haven't seen or talked to in a long time, so this is awesome. Um,
Yeah,
it's also my first Facebook Live to jump on since all of this, or ever, but especially since all of this started.
forever.
So, yeah. Um, Oh man, contest between Ben Runyon says that we need to have a contest between me and Connor Hicks on the mustache. So I haven't seen his
Oh,
lately. Maybe
yeah.
we can get him to send a picture over.
Yeah, if we could get a picture up, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Kenny's asking what the big question about the mustache is what Jessica thinks. So
Right.
for those of you who don't know, my wife Jessica used to work with Alignment Leadership. She actually admitted she likes it. So it
Well,
was first day she was like, eh. Second day she said, it's growing on me. I kind of like that. So
yeah.
there you go, Kenny. She likes it, man. Um, Jenna likes the stash. Thank you so much. Hey, Cindy, good to see you too.
Yeah, I
Aaron likes
wonder
it.
I
Yeah.
wonder
So
if we could not just get whether people like it or not, but like, is there a celebrity that you now look like because of the mustache? Maybe that's a good question we should ask.
like my celebrity lookalikes now that there's
Yeah,
a,
now that you
a
have that,
mustache in
yeah.
play.
Okay.
I'm not really in with all the pop culture stuff. I'm a little behind on most of the happenings there, but somebody else, yeah, let us know if you think I
Yeah,
look
I'd
like
love to hear what
anybody.
people think. Yeah. I also want to know, and I'm hoping people will be honest and comment, how many, since the pandemic started, how many people have, um, and it could have happened multiple times. I'm in the category of multiple times. I have been convinced that I've had COVID-19 at least three
Mm,
times, three different
yeah.
occasions. I have not just thought it, but I have verbalized it to my family and saying, I'm pretty sure I have COVID-19. So I would love to know how many people, and really, this is not a question like to gather information. It's more to find out how many people will be honest enough to admit that they have thought I've got COVID-19. Have you thought
Yeah.
it?
No,
No.
I haven't.
Have you been sick at all?
I
Allergies?
I've had a little bit of allergy, yeah, but not bad. I've been pretty routine with my medicine for that. So I kind of pre-plan. I know that oak allergy for me gets really bad
Yeah.
in springtime, so I kind of try to nip that in the bud.
Yeah.
But yeah, two questions, guys. Anybody, you guys, thanks for joining. Two questions. One is, who's my celebrity lookalike now that I have a mustache? And two, Chris wants to not feel so alone in thinking that
I'm desperate for community, Kyle.
he's desperate for. We're gonna get back to that question too here in a little bit. While you
Yeah.
guys are answering, yeah, who the celebrity lookalike is here, and
By
if
the way,
you
somebody already
thought that
put
you
up
have
exactly who I thought of, and that's a young Tom
the
Selleck.
young Tom, that's a great compliment. I'll take that one
Yep.
all day. So, however, Graylin just mentioned Matthew McConaughey. So that one to me is like the highest of all honors.
That
So,
is.
Graylin, I appreciate that, man. We
He's a
like to have a
giver.
good. He is a giver, yeah. Chris, I'm excited to do this with you today. I feel like I've missed just hanging out and having fun with you, and now that we get some feedback from other people here, you guys let us know if you've. Oh, Zach says guilty. Caitlin got strep and never been
Oof.
so happy to have strep throat.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh man. Josh Boyer says he definitely suspects every Amazon delivery person and the mailman. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
my favorite thing lately has been I've been getting out in the neighborhood and doing a little more walking and running. And when you see somebody coming down the sidewalk right in front of you and they dart to the other side of the road
Yeah.
until you pass, and it's just been fun, man. This whole shelter in
Yeah.
place thing, quarantining,
Quite
has been
quite
interesting.
the adventure.
Yeah.
Unforgettable.
Let's see here. I'm going to try to keep up with some of these comments. Susan Keene thinks her brother has it, or her brother thinks he's got coronavirus. So, Susan, we hope not.
Yeah. It's scary. I know the
Super
first time
scary.
I thought I had it, at the same time, and I'm still reading these articles, but this was like at the height of the paranoia. I was also reading all these things about, if you have underlying issues, obviously it can create more of an issue. And so, man, I everything they listed: hypertension, diabetes, overweight. I'm like, crap. I've got all that stuff. And so, yeah. So not only did I think I had it, but I thought I was in that, category of at risk. So man, so it's super scary. I'm making light of it now, but in the moment, it's terrifying.
Absolutely. We've had a lot of festive, high energy conversations here in our home of about how we're gonna, interact with people in the neighborhood or go to
Yeah.
the store versus the deliveries and mask or no mask and all of that fun stuff. So it has
Yep.
been wild ride. And now, here we go. Friday, state of Texas is gonna start opening up.
Yeah.
And so excited, nervous, apprehensive, like what's
Right.
gonna happen. And man, it's going to be fun. Evan says that he walks right down the middle of his street to avoid being close to people. Graylin saying that before the quarantine began, he missed work for 3 days, and the doctor said he had spring fever. So
yeah, we all thought
definitely
Graylin had it, by
relating to you.
we were all like, okay, we know why. Yeah, Graylin, stay
Graylin,
home.
go home, stay home, man. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Kelsey, Madeline. Josh Boyer says, "Get your fingers off my doorbell." Oh my gosh.
So that reminds me, my son is moving out on Thursday, and so we had to run over the storage unit. And this this is one of the first times I've left the house at all, other than a walk and stuff like that. So we get in the car, and I'm like, man, I haven't even actually driven in a month. drive over there, pull up, and then with all the paranoia and all of my, anxiety around this thing, it's amazing how you just start engaging in like the normal things without even thinking about it. So we pull up, and what do? I reach right out and punch in the code to get into the storage unit. And then the rest of the time I'm there, I'm walking around just like holding my hand,
what
not
do I do with
wanting.
my fingers?
Yeah, what do I do with my hand? I just touch COVID, and I don't touch my face, and then that's all I want to do is touch my face. So yeah, this thing is just messing with our heads.
Have you been to the grocery store
No, I
or
refuse.
any stores? Okay.
I have not. So
Hmm.
one of the things that we really rely on is, and so I'll make a plug, Instacart, and we did that for a while, and then
Yeah.
they just were like, "Hey, we can't come for like a week and a half," so we stopped. I got back on the other day, and now they're out in like the day after. So they're obviously either the demand has relented a little bit, or they've hired up. But yeah, we avoid. Um, Again, this is my paranoia, the petri dish
Yeah.
of a grocery store. I'm like,
Hmm.
we can't go anywhere else, so we're forcing everyone into one location. Anyway, I'm not going to get into all the neurotic thought that goes into my head, but yeah, that's one of those things I'm like, nah, I'm not going to go there.
Well, Denise Holiday's given us a tip: keep the hand sanitizer in the car at all times.
Yeah.
Um, that's good. Gunner is saying, I hope we invoke a run, walk, commute initiative when we go back to the office. I guess he's enjoying the flexibility of getting out in the sun and doing that. The vitamin D,
Yeah.
oh, he also says that mustaches are a good natural protection. So I don't know if
Oh,
there's a lot of data behind that one, but
yeah. I
let's
mean,
see.
I'm willing
Hey,
to believe it.
Brandy, Krista, Elizabeth, Liz, good to see you guys. Um, so I'll go ahead and I know we've been just kind of shooting the breeze here, but
Yeah.
welcome everybody to the live stream. Welcome to kind of insight into Chris and my relationship here as we just talk about mustaches, coronavirus, all of this good stuff. But we're excited to join the live stream today as part of the Align Online Facebook group as we continue to support people on their journeys in leadership and to really invest in our community and offer that community to anybody that wants to step in and join and to commit to becoming a better leader tomorrow than we are today. And I think that's why we're all here. That's why you and I get to work together, Chris. And
Yeah.
so I'm excited for that. And I think one of the things that we would like to talk about today is the idea of community and what is the value of that community to leaders. And so we have talked a little bit about this idea of authentic community. And so my question for you guys as you jump on this live stream today, I would love to hear your comments, feedback, questions around community. So my question to you is, what's the value of community in your life as a leader? And I would love to, anything around that topic, we would love to engage with you about, respond to those questions or comments. And that hopefully, this conversation will be more than just shooting the breeze about, the coronavirus and mustaches, but can actually lead to, you taking action towards becoming a better
Yeah.
leader. You reaching out to get whether that's reaching out for a community, reaching out for accountability. That's the whole purpose of this whole Align Online Facebook group, which is to provide resources and helpful content and relationships, community really to help us become better leaders. So with that, guys, I'm going to catch up on some of these comments here. Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or if we want to just
Yeah.
jump in and start talking, man.
Yeah, I think the reality of community is one of those things that, first of all, there's a lot of different definitions to that word, and a lot of people have a lot of different experiences. Their worldview might kind of, teach them certain aspects of what community means to them, and there are certainly multiple ways to look at it. And I, in no way, think I've coined the real definition, but like everything we do, at Alignment Leadership and really in our leadership journey, we really try to help define some of these more generic terms, not for the general public, but for us, so that there's something to pursue, something more concrete that we can, like you just said, take action on, which is, you know, which is a really important component of leading, is this idea of action. And so
Hmm.
for us, we really looked at it and we said we want authentic community. We want a community that promotes this concept of vulnerability, which is really just kind of as a human being, a way to truthfully kind of express, maybe some of the emotions that we're in, maybe truthfully express some of the thoughts that we're having, and we can do that in a safe environment. Hopefully, we've got
Mm.
a community around us that makes that safe, so that it empowers them to then speak truth back to us. So um, truth is one of those things that when given, um, then you'll almost always receive it. But we often live to the exclusion of community because we're unwilling to take that first step and that offering of
Hmm.
truth of a, hey, this is how I feel, this is what I'm thinking, and we're afraid to do that because we might find out that we don't have community,
Hmm.
and it really creates there's a lot of fear around that, rightfully so. That it's a very vulnerable place to be. But I have found that the power of authentic community really rests in how much I'm willing to be vulnerable, and then reach out for that accountability, and then ask for the truth to be spoken, and not in a way that's just always about, well, remind me, like, my value, and also remind me of my deficits, my blind spots, because we also see ourselves, we typically see ourselves as like, too good or too bad. We rarely see ourselves the way others see us,
Mm.
or in my case, with my faith, the way I believe God sees me, and the way He values me. So the idea of being vulnerable to a group of people, it really requires a lot of trust building through time, in order for you to feel like, hey, this is a safe group for me to be authentic with, in how I'm going to show up and be vulnerable to them, and now that empowers them to then speak truth back into who I am. And that's a really, really important component, not just to leaders, but in life in general. Anybody that we're spending time with, we really want to open ourselves up to an authentic community, because that's how we continue this whole transformation journey that we're on.
Yeah. Some of the comments here, I'm looking at, I want to catch up with a bit of those, but, and as I do, Chris, I'm wondering, like, some of what you just touched on, this idea of vulnerability, it's, if those of you listening, if you follow Brene Brown, she's done a lot of work in
Mm,
the power of vulnerability towards connecting, and,
yeah,
and connecting with other people, and then removing, um, shame. Like the opposite of that is
yeah,
really this sense of like shame and, guilt and fear, and so, yeah, I would love to hear from others, on on the live call right now about, how have you experienced authentic community, or how have you had stories of, um, stepping out in that vulnerability, and either and it's been rewarded with that community that you've hoped for and reciprocated, and accepted and valued and cherished, or, unfortunately, sometimes I think we also get rejected, and how do we overcome that? How do we continue to um, stay on track to continue to pursue this belief that this authentic community is what we need, especially as a leader?
yeah,
I know that, just in my conversations with you, Chris, that a big driver behind your journey in leadership was this idea of loneliness. And,
yeah,
um, and so, yeah, I know that, from, as a leader, that loneliness is a really powerful and unfortunately a really negative,
Yep.
feeling and burden to bear. And so, do you feel like that was one of the primary, was that a primary like motivation
Absolutely.
towards pushing you to overcome that fear of the fear of what's going to happen with this vulnerability
Yep.
if I let myself be seen here or be
Yeah.
known in pursuing that community?
Absolutely. And loneliness. It took me a long time, honestly. Once I decided that I didn't want to be lonely, or once I decided that and realized I was lonely, because the fast paced nature of life, and we're all guilty of this. When people ask us, how we're doing, we're typically we're real busy. I'm real busy, and busyness, and the speed of life, was blurring my ability to see just how lonely I was. And it wasn't until I realized that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have somebody in my life that I would be willing to be vulnerable to, or like this idea of sharing my deepest hurts with, and not even because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to bring somebody in. I didn't want to be a burden. I was just raised with the concept of you just you suck it up and you pick yourself up by the bootstraps and you carry on. You don't weigh people down with your emotions or your problems. You just solve those on your own. And so it took me a long time to, number one, realize just how lonely I was, emotionally lonely. And then after that, um, it became everyone else's fault. And
Mm-hmm.
as long as I was just upset that nobody invited me into community, um, it gave me permission to not authentically pursue community. And so I think for people to realize, emotional loneliness is self-induced, because what we do is we wall ourselves off. The only way that you're going to really have somebody that you're going to bond with emotionally is if you emotionally are vulnerable. If you let them see the deep hurt, if you let them see the deep joy. And I'm not talking about like, hey, this thing happened to me and I'm excited about it, but like, hey, this thing happened to me, I'm excited about it, and here's why. Because I'd had this struggle and then this thing happened and it turned around. Like, we just don't typically go into all the depth of the emotion. I know for me, I spend some of my energy really kind of barricading myself, even in my pursuit of community. So, all that to say, the biggest problem that I found in this pursuit was the fact that it was self-induced, and it became easy for me to basically expect everyone else to extend community to me before I was willing to extend community to someone else. So, yeah, it's certainly a journey each and every day. This week there's been something going on there in my life and in my emotions, and it took a while for me to kind of figure out like what it was. So there's a point at which it's hard to articulate maybe like what my emotions are. Thankfully, with my faith, I can go to my God and first and foremost have real community, authentic community with Him, and to really be honest with Him, so that He can maybe even help me understand what I'm feeling and why. But then after that, it was now a choice that I had to make. Am I gonna now that I've got a little clarity, am I gonna reach out to people about this, or am I going to like protect myself, because some of the circumstances around it have to do with the relationships I've had with people for a really long time, and it seems to escalate or like make the vulnerability seem more risky. The deeper the relationship, but it's been amazing to watch what happened in the week already, where the response has been more than I could ever ask for, not just in support and care and empathy, but in challenge. And people telling me like, well, then what are you going to do about this? Like, how are you going to show up for this person, knowing this is going on? And so, again, this isn't about just the empathy part. It's also about that challenge and that empowerment to be the man that I want to be for the people around me. So, yeah, it's worth the investment of our time. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. I think, you know, I think we've really got to figure out when we're looking for our community what it is that we need.
Yeah.
And I think surface level, it is that empathy. And I'd say that surface meaning
Yeah.
like our first need is to be seen and
That's right.
recognized and understood, that empathy. Um, and to just feel like we're not alone in that. But
Yep.
then really like, uh, I think about like my wife, Jessica. She tells this story of like when she was growing up, her parents were separated, and in college we would be having a conversation, or she'd have a rough day or whatever, and she knew, okay, if I want someone to empathize with me, I'm going to call my mom, and she's going to hear me, listen to me,
Yeah.
and um, and if anything, she'll come down here and help fix whatever it is I'm having problems with. But if I'm really feeling stuck and I don't want to be here anymore, I'm calling my dad, and
Yeah.
he's gonna kick me in the butt a little bit, tell me how I could have done differently or better or whatever. So I
Yeah.
feel like we really, just to demonstrate, like, we really do need a community that's going to give us that empathy, because we need that, but eventually we need to be empowered. And we talk about this in within alignment leadership, that really two of the really important stages of leadership is empathy, but then also when someone is
Right.
ready, to empower them towards the next step. And so having those people in your life who are intimately involved with those emotions that we're carrying around, those fears, the struggles, but then are
Yeah.
also there ready to go and to challenge us, to really help empower us on our journey to becoming who we want to be. So
Absolutely.
I think that's an important part of this conversation, is really defining, yeah, the authentic community being one to where we can feel known. So there's
Hmm.
value in like not feeling alone, like removing that emotional loneliness away from us, taking that away. But then also like, yeah, I don't want to be alone, but I also don't want to be the same guy I was yesterday. So
That's
I
right.
need help. And I've
That's
realized
right.
like I cannot do it on my own. I need help. I need to surround myself with those people. So um, yeah, just really, really great
Yeah.
stuff. It sounds really easy for us to talk about it like this,
Oh yeah.
but it's terrifying. It's
It's
terrifying. It's
terrifying is right.
um, that
It's
vulnerability
the
piece.
fear can really grip you, and fear can,
Mhm.
you know, dominate, unfortunately, our actions. And fear actually has the power to break our belief.
Mhm.
Rarely can emotion destroy things that are deeply rooted as beliefs, but fear, ooh, that is a powerful engine, unfortunately, in our life. I know it was for me. It just choked out my belief that I, didn't want to be alone anymore, and it just choked it out. Um, so
Mhm.
it's just something that it's not that we say, well, then be fearless. No, everybody's got fear. That's not the answer. The answer is putting people in place in your life that can help you overcome fear. So it might even be, somebody's, because of the commitment that I've been making to community. Then when crisis comes, now what I get is, I've got people approaching me and they're saying, hey, that last conversation we had, you didn't really seem yourself.
Mhm.
See, that's the power of community. So see, sometimes, because of fear, we're not the ones necessarily out there saying, hey, I'm struggling with, but it's on our face. It's because I'm known. People, and then I've made it clear that I want that feedback, and I want the truth. I'm a truth seeker, and so therefore I invite you to call me out, even when I'm not acting, the way that I want to, or if you think something seems a little off. So yeah, laying a foundation of community is harder during crisis. And that's why it's really important for us to focus on that, when we're not in crisis in relationship, but we can really um, invest in a way that allows for that community, that relationship to show up during crisis. So it's worth the investment. It's worth all of our energy and effort, and it's worth overcoming that fear.
Yeah. Braylon has asked a pretty good question here in the thread, and I want to get your take on it. He says, oftentimes community is defined by the time that we spend with people and groups in proximity to us.
Yeah.
Those people we live closest with or work closest with. So how have you cultivated community with people, family, coworkers, church family, during a season of isolation?
Yeah.
So,
Well,
challenging question, Braylon.
it is, and it's not one that I'm like, super proud of my answer to that, which is, there are, one word jumps out at me is intentionality, and being intentional for me, that just means that it's a priority. Like, I make it a priority every day, and mine tends to be circumstantial, and so I'm an out of sight, out of mind kind of communicator, and that's the part I'm not proud of. That's the part that I'm trying to be better at. And these kinds of scenarios really, unfortunately, highlight that, and because I'm literally out of sight. However, out of sight is not just a physical sight for me. Out of sight is also even just psychologically or emotionally. And I can go a day in my house, 2 days in my own house with my family, and not be intentional. And they're sitting right in front of me, and they're talking to me, but emotional focus drift into aspects of my job, my relationship with who I work with, um, my others, family members who aren't in the house with me. Um, it becomes an issue of intentionality, even when they're right in front of me, and to not take community for granted. It's not something that is owed to me. It's not something I'm entitled to. It's something I have to fight for and work for. And the way that I have to do that is really being intentional. We talk a lot about prioritizing our time. Well, that's really what intentionality is meant to do. It's meant to put it in its proper place, which should be near the top of what we do every single day, which is to make sure that we are in authentic community. I'm being vulnerable. I'm inviting people in to what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. But man, it is a constant struggle, even with people that are right in front of me, let alone people that I'm no longer seeing every single day in the workplace. So yeah, it's not something I'm proud of, but it's definitely something that I'm trying to do better on each and every day, is to really intentionally, allow people into a community that gets to inform who I am tomorrow.
Yeah, that's good. I was thinking about Graylin's question here, and how have you cultivated that community? And I think I've been challenged in that sense of like, can you cultivate it fully, like digitally or just over the phone or through video? And
Yeah,
it's a lot different when we talk about like creating culture or cultivating culture, and then those relationships and community, and especially in a time where stress, fear, crisis, all of that is really
yeah,
heightened, and it's felt so much more deeply. So the best I can think about that, Graylin, I can think of a couple of groups that I'm in through our church, and I would say that one of them really not close or very intimate with these people, but I would say that there is a level of authentic community in the sense of um, feeling like there's a level of me or a place of a piece of me that is more fully known here, that's not in other places of my life, whether that's in my work circles or other places. And it's an outlet to where I can feel known. I can feel like
yeah,
people are invested in me. And really the process of cultivating that has literally just been discipline.
yeah,
We meet not at the best, it's not the most convenient. It's like right smack dab in the middle of a Sunday afternoon when I'd rather be out hanging out in the pool, or going for a walk or something. But like the discipline of
yeah,
committing to that time, and knowing that these people are expecting me to be there for them just as much as I'm expecting them to be there for me. So It's not always something I look forward to, but at the end of every meeting, I'm very thankful that I've invested that hour and a half
Yeah.
into that time and space and into that authentic community, those relationships. So a big part for me, Chris, you used the word intentionality and priority. I, um, I would agree with that. I would just add in like discipline too. Like, okay, if this is it, like it's just it's a discipline. We got to
That's
work
right.
it out, just like any other muscle or habit that we
Yeah.
want to create. Um,
I think discipline is a huge aspect of when, especially when it's not in our ideal environment. I mean,
mhm.
it'd be one thing if, you could meet with them, face to face maybe. And I don't know, there are just circumstances that sometimes make it more appealing. Maybe at this time of day, maybe it's, what's going on in our lives. So I think discipline is a huge aspect to, um, making this a reality during this time when you're not able to connect, face to face or in person.
Yeah.
Another one, a word I'll throw in there is courage. I know that's one
Mm.
I struggle with. Yeah, I want the environment by which I'm going to be vulnerable to be a controlled environment. And so calling someone on the phone to me where I can't see their expressions, where I'm, and then laying bare like my emotions in that scenario, ugh, gross. It scares the crap out of me. So having the courage to make that phone call and the reward that I have received in making that phone call has been absolutely amazing. And there's no when it's authentic, and there are no degrees of authenticity. It either is or it isn't. And so the payback for authentically reaching out and talking about things that we may not want to talk about or we would rather talk about in person, man, you're going to get the payback because you were courageous. You made the phone call. So yeah, I love all of these different aspects of what it takes, especially during these kind of scenarios.
Yeah. Uh, Whitney made a quick question on the thread, and I think she simply asked, "Why do I feel alone, even though I'm in community?" And I've been thinking about that a little bit here, trying to multitask, listening to you talk, but also thinking about
Yeah,
that a little bit, if that's possible, whatever. But um, I guess my first stab at that, Whitney, would be, um, I and even as you were talking just now, Chris, about defining that authentic community, or taking the courage to step out into the authentic to create that authentic community. I think that we are the only ones, like personally, I'm the one that gets to define, is this community authentic or not?
totally.
I have no idea. I mean, I only know the vulnerability that you show me.
Yeah,
I don't know what else that is still beneath the surface, the fear, the intention, the hope, the dream, the belief that you're withholding from me, or that
right.
somebody might be withholding from me within my community. And so I think that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, is like we could be surrounded with people, and yet if I'm withholding, that's what I think what we're talking about here, Whitney, is like that's why I still feel lonely. I'm surrounded by people that maybe I enjoy and I like to spend time with. We can have fun, we can cut up. Um, and yet at the end of the day, there's still a piece of me that's not known. It's not, and therefore, because it's not known, it's not verbalized, I haven't expressed it, I haven't, let that be seen, then yeah, I still feel alone. I still feel, I haven't, had the courage to really express those things, get it off, put it out there to be accepted or rejected or empathized with or empowered by, these people that I'm surrounding myself with. So that
Totally.
would be my feedback for you, Whitney, and when or anybody else who's still thinking and believing that. So I think we get to be the ones to define the community in our lives, and not just by relationships, but
Right.
by that level of authenticity that we get to experience and participate in. And so I often, find myself looking around at relationships, wondering like, yeah, this is a relationship that I don't really feel like is very deep or very um, transparent or authentic, or I don't feel very vulnerable. I don't feel like I'm getting that and and so, yeah, it's hard for me to want to continue to invest in those places. So it's a really challenging spot. We really have to commit to who do we want to invest in and for
Yeah.
what reasons and all that good stuff. So
Yeah,
I
I would say that this concept of true authentic community has to be an immersive experience. If I'm about to dive into a pool, jump into a pool, I can't jump in halfway. Um, it's all or nothing, and that's the part the lesson I had to learn is that I wanted to wade into I wanted to wade into true authentic community, and what I got back was not true authentic community. And then I got yeah, and then I got upset because at least I gave it a go, and why aren't people giving it a go with me? And then I started to judge like why aren't they diving in with me? And I started to think, well, it's because I'm not diving in. I'm not diving in with them, so they're wading in with me, just like I'm doing. So, yeah, think of true authentic community as a completely immersive situation. It is not halvesies, which is why I think this concept of like marriage and it is I've heard people talk about over the years it's 50-50 or 100-100. Well, marriage, in order to be, I think, the picture that was painted of marriage, I think it has to be an immersive experience. It's all or nothing, and it's either living up to that definition of a true authentic community, or it's not. And when I found out that I held the keys to that, number one, I was kind of pissed because it now put it squarely on my shoulders. There was no one else to blame. But then number two, it challenged me in how much I truly wanted it, and it really put out before me the amount of discipline, as you talked about, the amount of courage, the amount of intentionality. What was it going to take to get what I was after? And it's still a daily pursuit, by the way. It's not like, well, I found this absolutely truthful, authentic community, and now every morning I wake up and I'm just surrounded in it. No, every day it's a pursuit. It's a reinvestment every single day. I don't ever wake up thinking, what a great day. I'm in my immersive community. No, I have to jump back in, no matter the circumstance, no matter the situation, jump back in, all in, into that community in order for it to really feel like I've got this authentic community who's looking out for me and cares about me. So yeah, it's an ongoing battle.
absolutely, Denise Holiday just left a comment here on the thread that says, expectations without communication leads to disappointment. And
Yeah.
I think that what a great summary, Denise, to throw out that, yeah, at the end of the day, if I'm holding on to a hope, an expectation, a dream that this relationship is going to feed me, or I'm going to feel seen, known, valued through that, but I'm not communicating that, or I'm withholding those expectations, and yeah, there's no way that those can ever be realized and fulfilled. So, yeah, it is an everyday pursuit. I love what you talked about. We can't just walk through the door and experience it and then expect that it's just there all the
Right.
time. It is something we have to tend to and toil in and
Yeah,
work towards and strive in. So it's work. It's hard work.
it
It's
is.
messy work.
And I'll throw on the list of your the thing and fail at. I mean, I
Yeah.
swing and miss so many times throughout the day. I give 80%, but expect 100% back. And there are days that I give 95% and expect 100 back, and it still goes back to that disappointment. I walk away disappointed, and it's because I'm always expecting 100% true authentic community from everyone all the time. I
Mhm.
you know Maybe it's just me, but I want to be known, seen, heard, and valued in a way that tells me I'm not alone on this planet, emotionally, psychologically, physically, and so I put that expectation out there so many times, and then I give 95, and I even pat myself on the back, like, yeah, that was really good of you to get that authentic, and to tell them the story and share with my, but man, they didn't really give it back the way I was hoping to. Again, I've lost sight of the fact that it's got to be this immersive experience, or else it's going to leave everyone feel this lacking of this authentic community, which really does destroy loneliness.
Well, that's a good point too. I mean, how, Chris, there's an idea that we want to be known and valued by everybody, our people. And so I'm wondering, what level do we need to limit that authentic community in our lives? And I don't have an answer to this. I'm fishing here. I'm just
Yeah.
super curious. And if anybody else has an, just we're discovering, do we limit that pursuit of authentic community to a tight knit group of people, or to a selected group of people who, we have that trust in, or we have that level of relationship with, cultivated that in, we know that there's a commitment there. Yeah, and especially as leaders, to what level do we embrace, or do we pursue that authentic community with people that we're responsible to leading all the time?
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important for us to really think through and talk through. And I don't know that there's a right answer, but I just am curious about what you think.
Yeah, I have to go back to, again, my faith, and I think I'm trying to always model my leadership style after, in my opinion, the greatest servant leader in the person of who Jesus was. And so for me, it's going back to, like, well, how did he loved everyone way more than I love everyone, and yet he didn't have 80, 90, or 100 people in his closest circle. He had 12 people in that really close knit circle that he built a community around, and then ultimately built his church on. And so I certainly don't pretend to know the answer to your question. I just think of, if I'm going to model this after somebody I feel like successfully lived up to the way I define leadership today, which is to love and serve people toward fulfillment. I just think, I'm going to do it after the greatest that ever was, and I think he really exemplified this concept of really investing in a vulnerable way to a small group of people, 12 people, who then, they honestly struggled with his vulnerability, because they weren't necessarily at a place emotionally to even understand what he was doing, or to give it back. But he was so faithful in giving him that vulnerability and that truth of what he, who he was, what he was doing, how he was feeling. And so anyway, again, I don't know the right answer to this question. I just know that's the model that I'm trying to live up to, and try to live out, is to have a smaller group in that that immersive experience where I can believe what they're saying about me, because I've fully jumped into that relationship. And there are a lot of people that we can't fully jump in. Maybe distance, maybe time, maybe just what's going on in the busyness of life. We maybe have to pare that back to a smaller number. Maybe it's only 4, maybe it's 6, maybe it's 2. For me, it's pick one, and then turn it into 2, turn it into 3, and from there kind of figure out, well, based on your personality, based on your circumstances in life, you might have 2, you might have 20. It's really going to be your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. And obviously something we need to keep chewing on. My mind's even going to the relationship between influence and this, like, what role does influence play, and that accountability piece. And so I think there's a lot here to unpack, and I'm really grateful for the time to share with you in this conversation, Chris, and for the activity and the engagement here through our comment threads. I think, real quick, as we kind of start to wrap up, this is the kind of stuff that you and I like to talk about on our podcast, the Excellent Failures podcast. So if you haven't checked that out, or if you have feedback for us, or have more questions, or just ideas, concepts that you'd like to hear more about, or chew on, or think through, let us know. We would love to, incorporate that and listen and respond well to what people, to what you guys want to engage with. So shameless plug there, Excellent Failures podcast. But also like Deb, as we kind of wrap up here, Deb mentioned an interesting piece, which is, and somebody else commented way earlier in the live stream about this as well. But what about the value of diversity within our community? And so maybe that's, I don't know if we have time to fully jump into that right now, but I think that that's an important thing
Yeah.
for us to consider too. Is, if I'm surrounding myself with 4, 5, 12 people who look, think, believe, act just like me, then man, I don't know like how much growth I'm going to have. I'm going to grow into somebody that looks more like myself.
Yeah.
Um, or am limited by their influence or their kind of, whether it's worldview or their um, beliefs, their traditions, their experiences. So I don't know, Chris, have you any insight there as far as like how to really invest in this authentic community, and what level of kind of how picky do I need to be? How strategic should I be in targeting people to be seeking out that community and that influence in my life?
So I'll start by saying, for me, the concept is if you value people, you'll value diversity. And if you value a certain kind of person, then you don't value community. So it really speaks to the soul of who we are, and kind of this idea that I want to be faithful to whoever God has put in my path today. And that, by the way, does not mean that everyone that He's put in my path today is going to end up in that inner circle. I have no idea. I'm going to pursue relationship in a way with everyone that
Mm-hmm.
values people, and those that will kind of work their way into this authentic community. For me, it will be, a lot of it's based on personality type. It's really based on this idea of what I'm going through in a particular season of life. But there are people in my inner circle right now that I 5 years ago, I wouldn't have. I would have said there's no way that that kind of person would be in the inner circle. But um, I believe it was out of a faithfulness to who God put in my path today. Also, this concept that if I value people, all people, and understand that they have intrinsic value, I don't have to agree with them. I don't have to. I don't even have to understand them to understand they have intrinsic value. And so if I truly believe that everyone has intrinsic value, then and I'm being faithful with those that are in my path, now anybody and everyone can be in that inner circle based on capacity, based on life experience, based on how connected we are, how willing they are to jump into authentic community. I know I've been vulnerable with people in the past, and they've made the decision, not for me. That's
Mm-hmm.
not really what I'm looking for. Um, and it's not that they're bad people now. Hopefully, they're probably getting community elsewhere. And so it's not an indicator of somebody. It's just saying that was not the right person at the right time, maybe to join that inner
Mm-hmm.
circle. So I just think diversity comes out of being faithful to the people that are in our path today, and by valuing people, understanding they have intrinsic value. And so therefore, everyone can add something to my life.
Yeah, I mean, what a great perspective. Just being open to the people that are already engaged in our lives, knowing that this is an inherent need that we all carry around.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I love that the question, Deb. Thank you for asking that. And yeah, I think truly what I think you were asking about, Deb, was community with a mix of people who aren't part of this. Do you ever find yourself being a part of a specific community, but truly living in community with a mix of people? So just really like just this idea that, yeah, we might be surrounded ourselves or spending a bulk of our time in this setting with this group of people, and yet
Yeah.
there's a reality that I'm still invested in other relationships outside of that that are shaping me, forming me, helping me become who I want to be. So I think there's a lot of value to that, Deb. Thanks for bringing that up, and just yeah, that idea of diversity, Chris, to be able to tap into that a little bit more. So, um, I don't know really here, Chris, how these things go, but we're at 55 minutes. I think if anybody else has anything else that you would like us to touch on, or a question or comment, now is kind of like that last call, I would say. But I'm really grateful for everyone's interactions today, and the conversation we've gotten to have, Chris, for the questions that the feedback that we've received through the comment thread today. So thanks, guys. Adrian, Aaron, Braylon, Denise, thank you for all that you've offered. Hey, Kiana and Emily, Leslie, man, what a great group of people. Jeff, um, a lot of you guys jumping on here to say hi and to engage today. So, Chris, any last words that you want to wrap up with here before we sign off while we wait on any other
No, I
comments or
would.
questions to come through?
Well, I would just invite people to an extended conversation that we're having today, like you mentioned, the Excellent Failures podcast. And the reason I'm going to make the plug is, we get these questions. I get a lot of questions a lot of times, and I think what people will find is on the podcast, it's not really about answers as much as it is kind of pondering questions and creating more questions for ourselves. And so, recently we've been having some internal discussions about, alignment leadership and just honestly about like my journey and in leadership. And, I think I use the word, I most of the time, my story is about being a flawed leader. And I just think to really emphasize the fact that the Excellent Failures podcast is really about that, because through the failing is when learning it sticks, it becomes sticky. And so I love all my scars in leadership, and I don't need to go around touting wisdom. I can just point to the different scars in my own journey, and that's really what the podcast is about, is to really kind of expose that and really understand what hasn't worked, so that we can maybe continue to try to figure out what will work in this pursuit to really love and serve people in a way that allows them the opportunity to feel like they're known, heard, valued, and fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if, as far as I'm concerned, I want to have a mindset of just being a lifelong learner, whether that's with hobbies, with people, with my jobs, whatever that is, day to day,
Yeah,
my family. So, yeah, that's definitely, I know my mentality going into the podcast or even conversations like this. And so, loving the opportunity to be able to have these types of conversations. And I'm hoping that through them, people, one, they do understand and feel like, okay, I'm not alone. Like I do have this desire, especially today. Yeah, I think it's totally normal. We all want community. We all
yeah,
want to feel known. We all want those people who can speak into our lives and invest in us in that way. And so now we just have to accept the reality and find the
that's right.
courage that I've got the keys and it's up to me. Nobody's gonna no, this isn't gonna happen to me. I have to go
That's
out
right.
and really put in the energy, the work, the effort, the failure, the trial of trying to experience that. So yeah, it's been a great conversation today, guys. If thanks, Barrett, Lauren, Jenna, Howie, good to see you, man. Denise. So yeah, thanks y'all for joining. If you want to hear more conversations like this, as Chris said, we do talk about this stuff on the Excellent Failures podcast. We'll send a link out through the group. I think Zach might have sent something out about that yesterday, but we'll continue to make sure you guys know how to find that if you haven't been there. And we look forward to hearing more from this group and this community as we continue to learn and grow in our journey towards being better leaders. So thanks everyone and have a great Tuesday.
Thanks, guys.